everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button down there for me. Appreciate everybody's support. There's a PayPal link for anybody that wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is there for anybody that wants to jump up on panel. We've been talking about the indemnification and surety and fidelity and everything here lately. And a large part of it, of course, has to do with that 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States. Includes all bonds, blah, 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 blah. In that, those are all what is known as instrumentalities of the government. So we're going to take a look at Investopedia first off, as we go into the court registry investment system and how it pertains to the government instrumentalities of those very registers and systems of records and blah, blah, blah. And as we see here, it says instrumentality, benefits, examples, and history. And when we think about the instrumentality, that's the conferring of a nationality of a United States citizen once you're born in one of the several states of the Union. So that instrumentality has benefits, and it's known as a business, a United States business, so it has business benefits. It says, what is an instrumentality? An instrumentality is a non-governmental agency that acts independently, but whose obligations are backed by the government because of its role in providing a public service. This is one of the 12 presumptions of their Roman courts, known as administrative corporate Article 1 courts, is that you're providing a public service and that there's somewhere some kind of contractual nexus. That's all it takes. And that public service is the fact that you're filling out those official government documents. You're acting independently, acting as an agent of the government itself, but you're in fact a non-government agency. See, that's what that identification is all about again. That's a state-issued government ID, a state-issued government driver's license. Those are instrumentalities issued by a governmental agency. The U.S., the Federal National Mortgage Association, known as Fannie Mae, is an example of an instrumentality. Created during the Great Depression to enable more Americans to buy their homes, Fannie Mae is both a government-sponsored entity and a publicly traded company under the symbol FNMA. So when you go getting those documents from Fannie Mae and start filling them out in that official capacity as the authorized representative doing so, they convert you as an investor in that documentation, giving up all your rights, titles, and interests to the property, which is the name itself, that you then sign in wet ink. And therefore, you have no rights, titles, and interests to that name. And they pool all of those investments that they gather up through those official documents every so often and deposit them in an investment fund, an index fund, mutual fund, exchange trading, publicly traded company. Okay? So let's take a look at the next one. This is from Iowa. Blow it up here. And this is 871, 23.7196, governmental entity definition. The definition of a governmental entity is a state instrumentality, a political subdivision or a political subdivision instrumentality, or a combination of one or more of the preceding. ID entity, id entity, the governmental id entity is an instrumentality of the state or a political subdivision or a political subdivision instrumentality. Now, political subdivision is that residential zones. Those are voting zones, tax zones, school zones for the zoning improvement plan. Okay. The next one, we're going to take a peek at what this court registry investment funds, investment of court registry funds under Title 28, the Judicial Code. So like I said, it is prejudicial. It's already predetermined on how these funds are supposed to be registered and that they are investments. Your court registry funds, because they've been deposited in the court register. And in that deposit, that's where they pool everything up at the end of the day or at the end of the week in this situation. They gather everything up at the end of the week and they pool them all into one big investment in the court registry investment funds. The Director of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Or the Director's designee under subsection B may request the Secretary of the Treasury to invest funds received under Section 2041 in public debt securities with maturity suitable to the needs of the funds. In public debt securities. So let's take a look at the next one, as I've reminded people many times. You notice that said, let's take a look at it again. It says, Director of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts, as I highlighted. Remember that? Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Administrative Office of the United States Courts. AO 430. Administrative Office, form from the Administrative Office, AO 430. Case number, district, location, type of proceeding, equity. You notice in this box here, all of these particular portions, these elements, are of like kind because they're in the same box. And you can pick and choose one or the other. And it says plaintiff, other, government, and debtor. Debtor. Understand that. That's equating that the plaintiff is the debtor, the government is the debtor, or the other is the debtor, and that is the trustee. Up here we've got official's title. District judge, bankruptcy judge, magistrate judge, other, specify. Chancellor, because we're talking equity. Jury, yes or no? No. Defendant, creditor, other. So other, defendant, and creditor all equate the same in the same box here, just like all of these equate to be the same as they are in this box. Of like kind. The defendant, creditor, or other, settler. We're coming to settle these matters. Finalize, to put an end to. The very definition etymologically of finance, proving that we are the creditor. I hope everybody's following along. Oops. Somehow it didn't transfer to my page. What happened here? Okay, so we got again AO 430, Administrative Office of the United States Courts. It's not the district judge, not a bankruptcy judge, not a magistrate judge. We're not here to judge. We're here to be the chancellor and make a decision in equity, in all fairness, making all parties whole, so that no person shall be held liable in any court. Shall be held liable, a future tense. We're settling it now. Plaintiff, other government debtor. Defendant, other settler, creditor. And of course, the other would specify trustee. See, it's a trust expression. Equity regards the beneficiary to be the true owner. Beneficiary is the one who can come forth and control and settle the estate. The next one, we're going to do the Article 3, the judicial branch. Remember, I told you it's prejudicial. It's already been determined. Article 3, judicial branch. Vesting clause. Does that sound like investing? Okay, pay attention to the language, folks. It tells you should be able to read between the lines and be able to rightly divide the word of truth when you see these terms. Vesting versus investing. Vesting clause, Section 1, Article 3, Section 1. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Congress did in fact establish, and it still holds true, Article 1 and Article 4 administrative courts. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior, responsible to one another and to God, and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. And then you've got the overview of judicial vesting clause, Section 2, justiciability. Justiciability. In order for it to be justiciable, as they've already prejudicially determined, it comes an issue of justiciability first. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. And this Constitution is the one they take their oath to, as well as the state constitutions. So any issue that arises under those is a justiciable through law and equity in any of the courts. That's the gateway to the equity. You have to bring the equity. If you want equity, you must first bring equity. Otherwise, anything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. They never mention the court of equity. You have to be able to state your value, stamps and other representatives of value. Dean Phillips makes a great point. Good behavior in the military is to be deceptive. No. Good behavior in the military is to gather as much information as you can so you can decipher it if it's in code or interpret it in the manner that might be offensive to see if you might need to do something preemptive against it. Like determine pre-criminal thoughts and therefore have to start censoring people. Absolutely. Everything is a military affront, folks. So again, the laws of the United States and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority to all cases affecting ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls. What are those as opposed to United States citizen? What are those as opposed to a resident? Does anybody bother looking into those definitions? Maybe I'll go over those definitions, but most often they consort to the same concept of being a messenger, bringing a message, wherein it equates to the same thing with military commissions being on the same mission. A military post or a diplomatic post. Those are the two jurisdictions, folks. To all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction. To controversies to which the United States shall be a party, the principal party of interest on the obligation of internationally protected persons under full faith and credit, and American interests both, as well as the preamble to the Constitution of domestic tranquility, national security, and the general welfare. To controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state and or citizen thereof, and foreign state citizens or subjects. Anybody want to step up and talk about subject matter jurisdiction now? Tenth Amendment, folks, read it. Read it until you understand that there's only one thing that can delegate the powers to the United States or the states, respectively, in any constitution, and that is the people. They inherently get both all of their political power and their credence, full faith and credit from the people. And they are not subjects. That is subject matter jurisdiction. In the states, they operate in rem, which is the thing, the subject matter, the documentation where all the evidence is presumed to be held. That story, that false story with the fictitious name. Says not sharing. Gaining Wisdom says not sharing. It shows sharing on my screen. Did we drop out? Absolutely. See, we're not subjects to history. We're not subject to the Declaration of Independence. We're not subject to any of those. They did not have us in them. Quit trying to paint me and everybody else with that brush. If any brush, we were already painted, sanctified, and ordained as prophets unto the nations, wherein those nations' ordinances are not to be used to sanction the very word of God or truth or love. So be it. In my opinion, of course. So somebody get me a yay or nay. Are we sharing? Because we're going to go on to the next part here. As we saw the judicial powers and the justiciability and what it has to do with the administrative courts, the executive branch, exclusive jurisdiction, forum shopping, and all that. That's that birth certificate and death certificate graph I showed you from the state's vital statistics jurisdiction that they create when you're born. All persons are created by different classifications, while all men are created equal. What happened there? See, that personal record classifies everybody as different somehow, whereas that Declaration of Independence tells us that all men are created equal. Thank you, Creative Life. So let's take a look at the next page I've got up here. I remember sharing this many times, and this is the foundation of what I'm talking about. It's from the Postal Service. United States Postal Service is the registered agent, as you see up here in the top. See my blue highlight? As I undo it, and then highlight again, undo it. That's Postal Service. That's a registered agent already. It's already telling us there's a registered agent in this public trust. And then it says judicial officer. And it says the judicial officer department is a neutral. Remember those treaties? See, it's already, the offensive has already been neutralized, folks. So what is all this insanity of all the division and separatism? Huh? And it says independent forum within the United States Postal Service, comprised of the judicial officer, the office of the administrative law judges, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. And hold on, folks, I got to take a break here real quick. I'll be right back, Hadass. Greetings, sister. How you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, hon?
Good, good. So are you
So you're talking about
yeah,
postal court, huh?
yeah, well yeah, are you tagging along how this all ties into the administrative courts as Article 1 corporate
Oh,
and the judicial
definitely.
officer as being a postal service board? They're implicating that there's some kind of contract in there.
Well, and I know that the a lot of the courts in the courthouses, jails, especially, they're acting as a call service. So basically, like a big office building, and they're acting as the mail room, and we all have a quote unquote office
Yeah, and that's the
in that
same
office
thing with the
building.
infant
Yeah.
ward at the hospital.
Yep.
That's where they
Exactly. Right.
develop that military post. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
understand, this is supposed to be a neutral and independent forum. What is a military post? Well, what is an embassy? That's a military post, and that's a neutral and independent forum where somebody can seek asylum. Safe harbor. Why is it
Right.
that the people that are born in this land aren't presumed to have already safe harbor, but are instead implied through contract to be possible enemies of the state, making trades with the enemies? Why is that the presumption? I find it sickening because,
Because
because it's supposed
it's
to be
all
neutral and
operating through,
independent, already presumed.
yeah, but it's operating through trust.
Yes.
That's the problem. Because
And
you have
no,
the usus, the previous, and the abuses title. The abuses title, what everybody refers to as the equitable title. That's the right to transfer, buy, gift, sell, but also damage and destroy.
correct. And
Which is
people
why
don't,
we're made here.
yeah, and people don't understand that when you're passing on property, not only do you have that right to destroy property, but in passing on property, it equates to the same effect that you don't give somebody rotten property either. You don't give somebody something that, in trust law, you don't give a truck that is qualified as a deadly weapon in some situations to an 8-year-old, teach him how to drive and send him out on the road. There are qualifications to certain giftings, and so we have to be ever vigilant in this. And not only
That's
that,
why
but
the
that
grantor and the settler are always responsible or liable for, their choices in trustee or in beneficiary or heirs and executor administrator. Because if they choose poorly, then, or incompetent trustee or greedy executor and administrator or undeserving heirs or beneficiaries,
right.
then
And
that's on them.
I did a video. I can't remember his name, fucking brain fart, but he did a great short on the concept of shampoos. Now everybody has this popularity contest of having their hair done nice, and they have to have just the right shampoo. So they demand a selection of 100 shampoos. Is that really your best option? Is to demand, like they're doing with the pronouns, to have such a plethora of ways of addressing a situation when there's in fact real simple solutions that are less numerable, that might give you
And yeah,
better effects. And yet,
this is why I
because of
tell
our
people don't.
insane demands create insane chaos. Go ahead.
Mhm. This is why I tell people to focus not so much on the title, and then that's what trust law does, is it focuses on the title. You need to focus on the action. Your acts speak louder than
Absolutely.
words, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I say I'm just going for correction of the record, because I understand that's where the problem is. And as far as this public trust goes, if I'm really going to step up to my public service, in equity, one must first bring equity. This imputes the same concept that, for goodness gracious, and that sounds just like contract law where it gives equal consideration. And so if I give equal consideration and I find an error, shouldn't I also be able to come up with a solution?
And that's where you have the whole, you have to select your service, right? Because if you don't select your
Absolutely.
service or how you're going to be of some use to, others and yourself and your family, then they're going to for you, and you're not going to like it.
Yeah. And it goes back to all the videos I did on like the prepaid expenses. Your taxes are prepaid, your insurance are prepaid. There's a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
that are prepaid, and nobody understands that
Housing
concept. It
and
still believes
utilities, food, yeah,
they
clothing, all
still
of that.
believe it,
All of
that they owe a debt.
that.
And
Mm-hmm.
if we can get them to understand the concept that this political body operates on the full faith and credit of the people for its commercial venue, which is a military venue, that incorporates that
Everything's really good.
to form a more perfect union. The domestic tranquility, national security, and general welfare is part of that attempt to make this great nation. And here we are trying to say, make this nation great again. I don't know if it was ever great yet. I don't know if it ever reached its potential in forming that more perfect union. I think it's all been falsified.
I
We've
don't think it
been
has.
living a false dream.
Well, and if you look back at what people would call like the Gilded Age and all that kind of stuff, not so gilded. And what people
Exactly.
think of, everything being backed by gold and silver, and that's when it was, the bound chicka wow wow kind of time. Not at all, guys. If you go back and you look at the workhouses and everything, and like the depressions and everything that went on during that, when you have gold and silver backed money that was controlled, that value was controlled by a very very elite few, and they got to yank that rug out from under you whenever they wanted to, and they did. I mean, it was not an easy life at all.
Yeah, and
We
it's
complain about now.
Well, and think back to the forefathers before we had the public education system. This is what really went wrong. See, the forefathers held public office, but they didn't get paid for it. And they didn't have public offices to hold them in. They went down to the local bar, the library, or one of their very own businesses on Front Street or something. And they held the doors open to the public because the places they went to were public and it made sense. Invite the view of the public that we're obligated to serve in this public service, that we're obligating ourselves to do without the pay of emoluments. See, that's the
Well,
true
and
public
I'm
service.
happy you brought up the public part, because the one thing I was looking at this last week is ranks in the military, right? Because everybody's talking all the time about going in the private, going in the private. And I don't find very much accountability in the private. That's kind of where like all of the, monsters go and hide, and you have to play by their rules unless you know how to play the game, well enough so you can make them play by your rules too. But I do find that when you look at the ranking in the military, it's funny because the lowest rank in the military in the army is a private in the
Private
infantry.
first class.
Infantry.
And it's denoting that
Infant.
before first. Well, it's showing a connection. It's like a hyphenated word or term. It's showing
Yep.
private on this side becoming first class. First class what? I thought I already passed all my classes. Now I'm being
Right.
first class. See, it's all a military indoctrination to repeat history. You just had all your history. I thought, right? Again, this is the American education system where we end up with people that are generally, on the average, educated in reading comprehension, about seventh or eighth grade reading comprehension. I can't imagine what their comprehension of science or medicine or biology or music or politics or civics or anything else could possibly be if those weren't even existent. We've been taught so much false shit and not taught to think for ourselves, but actually to remember the false shit so that we will fall in line and just keep repeating history. In my opinion, of course. It's ridiculous. So let's get on to the last part. This is the, oops, we lost her. Hopefully she'll come back. This is United States District Court, Middle District of North Carolina, and its thing about court registry investment system. And you can pull this up in any one of your states. I pulled this one up, and just for shits and giggles to show you, they have them, and they're going to be different styles. And I pulled up the one for Iowa as well. So we'll go over that one next. There she is.
Sorry, got kicked off on transfer to Bluetooth. Oh, but you guys should look at the whole really quick the military different ranks and the different branches. It's funny because the Air Force is the only branch that doesn't have warrant officers. Number one. Number two, the Navy and the Air Force are the ones that have seaman and airman, right? Not private, not ensign, all that. And there's even the SPC, which is special. Is it special private or district or something? Yeah. It's when you start going through it and you're looking at it, you're like, oh wow, it's just right in your face. So
Yep.
just go look at that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I've got a Blue Jackets manual right over here.
Nice.
So we take a look at this, and it says the court registry investing system is an interest-bearing cash management tool administered by the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Okay, so every district court that uses the court registry investment system through the court clerk, who is so designated by the director, does have to abide by the federal securities exchange laws. And they're doing so by mimicking state securities laws through those pooled investments, the cash management in an interest-bearing account. At the end of the week, They gather up all the bonds and the interest that they gathered up, pool them up, and then trade them under their own name. Otherwise, where's the interest-bearing management? It is an investment. What are the C.O.W.A.R.D.S objectives? C.O.W.A.R.D.S has 4 objectives. Safety of principal. Not the investor. No one else. The principal. The overriding objective. Who is the principal party of interest? United States in all cases. Obligations and other securities of the United States includes all bonds, even those issued under the state's blue sky securities laws. The overriding objective of registry cash management is to provide for the maximum protection of the principal. Evidently, they're missing out on who the principal is because, again, the principal party in interest is in the United States under 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States. 4, 18 U.S.C. 9, United States vessels or vessels of the United States. 4, special maritime territorial jurisdiction transactions under 18 U.S.C. 7, Admiralty and Maritime Courts.
Did you know that less than 5% of lawyers and judges are actually licensed to operate or practice in a maritime court?
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
It's a very special college that they get handpicked for after they graduate law school. There's not very many of them throughout the world. It's very interesting.
Yep. Now here's an interesting fact, folks. Pay attention. Sufficient liquidity. Adequate funds must be available to comply with all court-ordered disbursements without endangering principal by surrendering securities before maturity. Do you understand what surrender is? It is a commercial transaction. Reduced administrative costs. In C.O.W.A.R.D.S, the registry funds are pooled to purchase treasury securities. They're traded as an even exchange. The pooling allows C.O.W.A.R.D.S fund manager to make significantly fewer but larger transactions than would be otherwise possible. So in all of those funds that are mutually accepted by the C.O.W.A.R.D.S fund manager, even though they're all in different names, and most of them are imperfect, in this imperfect usufruct, known as imperfect titles, wherein there's only really one being that can actually perfect the title, and that's the one whose in name it is.
The genuine article.
Correct. Original government document relating as a relator to the relative being. It is in fact a derivative. Having that derivative is in fact evidence, material fact evidence of the spiritual existence, so long as that spiritual existence can come forth and claim that birthright. That piece of paper would not exist as it does without myself. This keeps transaction costs to a minimum. So instead of taking all of the weekly bonds that they create, all those individual names, last names converted to firm names that they do in those courts, instead of making each one of those a transaction, they do the conversion. They're all listed as firm names for trading. So the conversion is for trading purposes as an investment in an interest-bearing account. Whose account? Theirs. In their name. So they pool them all up, and it's just essentially like creating another corporation or a trust or a contract on the spot. I would equate it to making a new contract. Market rate
It's like
earnings.
a cooperative trust, right?
Right,
With a
right.
bunch of assets all put into one.
Correct. A cooperative trust.
Which are one of the hardest ones to break.
That's what I just did a video on that not too long ago on my Saturday morning classes. I have my background and it says cooperative trust. That's the primary goal. An impenetrable trust where many people work together and
Yeah,
protect it
because then
the
you got to get to
same way.
every single one of them, right? Before you get to it.
Yep, every last one of these people is covering their own ass. It's called piercing the corporate veil, and as I'm exposing, piercing the political veil, those zoning improvement jurisdictions. And again, that's that use of the address.
Covenant, right?
Well, it's the use of the address with the legal name. We've been taught in the public education system to use a legal name, the first and last name, and then put down our address and the zip code. And that's implying that we have a postal board a contract with the postal service somewhere as a contract postal unit. That's a simple implication that becomes an adhesion contract when you start filling out all these documents without knowing what you're doing. Those are official documents. Ask them. Is the DS-11 an official document? Yes. Is the change of address form an official document? Yes. Is the SS5 an official document? Yes. Is the form AO430 an official document? Yes. And why are you filling them out? Isn't that their job?
Well, that's funny because on the 8975 for the IRS forms, at the country report and a tax jurisdiction and constituent entity listings, it actually tells you right there that they're having us fill out all the forms for that parent company or organization.
The United States business.
As a MNE group, multinational enterprise. Because they're all entering to get a prize, right? It's all gambling.
Well, yeah, it's all foreign trade. It's for rewards and awards. Well, who's the Lord? I don't know. Yeah. Now all of a sudden it's fucking 3-card money?
Come on. Do you need to re-register your wager?
It goes on to say market rate earnings. The total pool of registry funds earns market rates of returns. Registry funds in C.O.W.A.R.D.S are invested in short-term treasury securities. Get this, folks, thus eliminating any need for collateral. Short-term treasury securities. Remember, it's the director that delegates the court clerk to be able to do this stuff, and it is directly tied to the Treasury as treasury securities as an obligation or other security of the United States. But what they're doing is they're eliminating the need for a collateral. How does that happen?
Because they're using a stamp as the collateral. That's what I found.
Stamp or other representative of value. Guess what they did? They entered it into an electronic bookkeeping system. It now becomes time-stamped and security certified.
And they can literally take a $10 stamp and turn that into a $200,000 piece of property, and that $200,000 piece of property into a $10 million bond.
They can take the electronic information and turn it into the bond and put a stamp on it.
Yep.
That's what all this blockchain is on this internet, folks. It's a titling system.
They just upgraded it.
It's a title system, and it's got a blockchain to keep that title going. And when you put it out into that system, guess what happens? All of a sudden, that title grows all these different fingers, and everybody's got access to it. You have to learn how to protect it. Provide the collateral, the indemnification. None of this out here has an indemnification. It's not required to have that collateral. That's what the indemnification is, saying, hey, if I cause damage, here's the collateral. What do you think is going to float better? Something that has collateral and shows that it is backed, or something that doesn't show collateral and shows that it's operating in bankruptcy?
Credit. That's the problem with this. Is what I found with the whole debits are the actual value, right?
Bankruptcy.
Well,
Watch. Now we're going to go to the Iowa code. This is Iowa, and this is amended order regarding deposit of investment of registry funds, talking about the court's registry, right? Let me blow it up. And right there it says at the very top, United States Bankruptcy Court. It has to do with bankruptcy, folks. And I don't care how you play the game. If you're playing with the house chips of the United States and they're bankrupt, guess what? You're using bankrupt chips too.
Credit is empty IOUs.
Exactly. Who the fuck you think I is?
Well, that's why I find it funny. Yeah. Everybody thinks credit's like the bound C.O.W.A.R.D.S, and I'm like, no, actually, that's like the empty note that doesn't have any value. You want to hold the debt because that has the value. You can only use credit one time and it gets burned, right? Kind of like crypto. Yep. You can burn crypto.
Well, depends on how you use it.
Right?
Depends on how you use it.
Yeah.
Credit can be used just like money and circulate. The court has determined that it is necessary to adopt local procedures to ensure uniformity of deposit. Remember, we spoke of who's depositing it? You are. It's then considered an investment, and a tax administration of the funds has to take place.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Because depositing it doesn't that mean not posting it? Why are we not posting it?
No, it's already been posted. Now it's been depositioned. It's been moved from this post to another post. They're just reposting it.
Okay, so this brings me up to my next question.
This is why I say it's important to understand you're the post. Jeremiah 51:31. Yeah. One post shall run to meet another. That's telling me that I'm the post. Why are they trying to move the goal post all the time?
This is why I think, exactly, and they're always moving this around and shipping us this way and shipping us that way. Yep. How do you do a mail stop where you get them to stop? You know, like, I know that you know that I know that you know, stop it, right? So that's one of the things I've been trying to figure out lately.
So it's telling us a lot of things here, particularly if you think about this deposit. Okay, there's something that defines something foreign. Investment, that's defining it's most certainly something commercial as a return that we thought, we put something out as an investment. We import that we want it to circulate and come back to us and return and give us something extra, something bonus, some kind of prosperity, abundance. But then in that abundance, you have to have tax administration so that when your cup welleth over, you're able to pay that tithe, paying it forward, giving that gift. See, it's a gift. This order replaces General Order 216-1. It is ordered that the following shall govern the receipt, deposit, and investment of registry funds. What did you use as your deposit to the clerk? Did you use a check? Did you use cash? Did you use a money order? What did you use? And is it an obligation or other security of the United States known as all bonds and stamps and other representatives of value, despite whether it's a Federal Reserve note, a coupon, a check, a Treasury security, a U.S. security. Despite any of those, what about all bonds and stamps and other representatives of value? Where was that conversion?
Wasn't an FRN or a dollar or bill or whatever? Isn't that just a giant stamp, basically?
Well, yeah, it's just a different form denoting the same concept of a communication of a debt.
That we're not registering or logging in our own log and then turning into Treasury, because that's what the Fed does all the time, and that's why they destroy,
Same with all these court documents. Same with all these court documents.
Yeah, that part.
See, when you hand in a court document, guess what? Guess what? There's a value to it. There's a justiciable value to that court document. That means it's justiciable. It can be weighed and measured with a prejudicial determination that's already been made. Look at the data elements on it. Does that fit? Yep. He used this term. He used this term. He used this term. And now they have an analog system that will pick that up.
Scan and see what it is.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing, right?
So it goes on to say receipt of funds. No money shall be sent to the court or its officers for deposit in the court's registry without a court order signed by the presiding judge in the case or proceeding. He's one signer. He's got to be one signer. But understand, we have a multiplicity of signatures being required here. And we have documents that are going through with one judge that signs and then goes to the clerk. Understand, it is a court order signed by the presiding judge that is then transferred as a piece of paper, a piece of property, to the court clerk, who then issues it by countersigning it herself. So where is the signature required by the party that's supposedly presumed not required to sign it, but is being demanded to sign it? See, I come up with all kinds of questions in this public service, which is a public trust. If you have a signer and a co-signer, then that trust is already complete. Why are you bothering me? Get it?
Because it's funded with life insurance policies on your butt, and they need you to sign them over so they can capture.
They absolutely need me to settle it. Nothing else. The party making the deposit or transferring funds to the court's registry shall serve the order permitting deposit or transfer on the clerk of court. The party making the deposit or transferring funds to the court's registry shall serve the order permitting the deposit or transfer on the clerk of court. Is that the bailiff?
I never looked at it that way before.
Or a prosecuting attorney. Well, the bailiff in technicality is the actual surety in the court.
Well, yeah, because the bailiff tends to be the sheriff's department or the police department.
Yep, he's serving under the sheriff.
County, and they're actually the defendant and the surety because they're the ones that breach the peace and the public trust.
Yep.
Yeah.
The party making the deposit or transferring the funds shall serve the order. So he's the one that serves. That's why you hand the papers in court to the bailiff to hand to the judge. You understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He is the transfer agent in that. In other words, the surety. Unless provided for elsewhere in this order, all monies. What are monies? Is a blank piece of paper monies, as the term commercial paper and money is known as negotiable instruments. can you use a piece of paper for negotiable instrument, particularly when it's blank and merely known in that presence as commercial paper? Obviously
Yep.
intended for having negotiations putting on it, like you mentioned earlier. Wouldn't a dollar bill be just like a stamp? So now we see a blank piece of paper would be the same thing. You just have yet put your symbols on it.
You can use a toilet paper for all you care because it's still a timber
Napkin,
credit, isn't it?
absolutely.
Yep. I've had to do that.
Ordered, ordered to be paid. Ordered to be
And
paid.
don't. And one thing I did find is that peeps don't do the whole endorsing things because as soon as you endorse it, it makes it a bearer bond, and that means anybody can cash it. As long as it's not
Correct.
endorsed, it's still an order paper, and that means nobody else can cash it or use it except for you
Right. And
or
in
Wyrd.
that, instead of giving a blank endorsement where they can then qualify it and serve their purposes with it, you can give a restricted endorsement, which puts an end to it, and it cannot be renegotiated. It has been finalized.
Or you can do another endorsement where it turns it into a revolving credit, right?
Correct.
Mm.
And it says all monies ordered to be paid, to be being future tense, to be paid to the court. Never will they tell you to pay the plaintiff. Never will they tell you to pay the victim. It will always go to the court and then go through its funding mechanisms. Always. The electronic
Or the
system.
sheriff.
Say what?
I said, or the sheriff. Sometimes they'll have it go through them.
Well, but again, it's always going to be through some kind of instrumentality. They're not going to bring gold or silver.
Oh hell no, no. I'm saying, but they'll
That's,
use the sheriff instead, like in the municipal level, especially they'll use the sheriff instead of going through the court directly,
oh, I see what you're saying.
like
Yep.
a smoke.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be paid to the court or received by its officers. And this is what you're talking about, trying to use the back doors. In any case, pending or adjudicated, shall be deposited with the Treasurer of the United States in the name and credit of this court, pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 2041. Got to be done. So they're using those blue sky securities laws, calling them back early before maturity for surrender.
OID.
In original issue discount. They're going as the original issuer.
And they're selling it at a discount, at a very deep discount, by the way.
Oh, yeah. That's why I told them, in this $350 bond for failure to appear for jury duty, they can go in and invest that at 10 times the amount. I could turn around and claim 3 times the amount for government indebtedness because of that. They call harm and loss and injury to the government through issuing of a false debt to a bankrupt entity as a principal at that. And then under that, through the salvage laws, get 10 times that. So they want to play games. Let's up it. That's what, 700. That's 1,050. That's oh goodness, yeah. We're talking about what is that? 10 times that. That would be
Well, if they're sending it
$10,500 for a $350 bond.
oh, easily. But if they're sending it through the CRIS system, they can hypothecate it up to 144 times on the first go round alone. If they're sending
Yeah,
it through the VCAP program, the IRS, that's where you
yeah,
can turn a $10 stamp into a $20 or $200,000 purchase of land into a $10 million bond.
yeah,
Boom,
yeah.
boom, boom.
Because you're covering the surety with an indemnification, promising that you're going to provide through that environmental easement that you're going to be a steward to the land and protect it, if not at least equivalently to that of the National Forest Service, but up to even greater standards. That you
Well,
will
get
in
this.
fact
I
follow
found
the
out that
federal
most
codes.
of the most of those bonds that they're issuing, the $10 million ones that they're doing on the voluntary compliance assurance program, right? Because we all want to be in compliance with the IRS, right? They're actually issuing them under medical facilities. Hence why everything's under a hospital in the military.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. Is your Health and Human Services, greeting Imperium Privatus. The Health
Right.
and Human Services is a military branch of government, folks. How you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing great. I was listening in. I wanted to chime in a little bit earlier. And I had a question. You guys were talking about the funds circulating and how to cancel something. That'd be just like canceling a stamp, wouldn't it? Acting as postmaster?
Well, yeah, but understand again that stamp has a certain value that remains in it. And again, understand this too, folks. Part of that value that it's retaining is known as historical value.
Intrinsic.
Right. And so that goes to like collectors. As long as that little piece of paper survives and is the best mint original condition, the better it will hold its value. And that's part of what we're dealing with here. So it's a matter of collectible materials with those symbols. And this is what stamps are all about. Philatology.
Philatelic.
Yep.
Yep, that.
And so when you ask the Postal Service, is a United States stamp the equivalent of money? Yes, it's our own form of money. So when you cancel a stamp, it doesn't remove the value. It still remains for its intent and purpose as a use of money, but it's internal to the Postal Service.
It turns it from an order paper into a bearer bond that they can now monetize in cash.
And that's and that's private, and that's a private
I guess my question
association.
would be, would that stop circulation of that paperwork within one bank to another bank, or from one court to another court?
Right, and that's what they're doing. Like I said, they're just mimicking at the state's administrative level through the blue sky securities laws, the pooling and investing of the securities laws at the federal level. And they're doing that first and then surrendering it to the United States as if though it's a clean security. That's money laundering.
Yep. I even found, get this, I was going through, because I've been collecting a dollar bill for each Federal Reserve bank, which, by the way, eaches are really hard to find. But I've been finding some that are actually canceled already, and they put them back into circulation. So they could trace the registration number and keep monetizing on it.
Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine the extent of realizing the use of paper money, just like a Federal Reserve note, to be used over and over and over and over again in many different venues.
Right? Now they're just doing it on a digital. So instead of having that piece of paper that has a registration number on it, now all we have is the registration number, right? Without the piece of paper. Or we have like an NFT, right?
Or a sigil, like
an
my
NFT?
sigil here.
Yeah.
I can send a straight up communication in my text and put my sigil on it, and those that know me privately through the private administrative or private association, okay, they can accept it, open it up, and they're going to feel safe and everything. People that don't know might see it as some kind of Trojan or something and think I'm trying to attack them. It's literally a private member associative symbolization.
Because one thing I found this actually last year. I was looking at one of our cars, and I noticed there was a barcode on the windshield, and I was kind of like, "Why is there a barcode on the windshield?" So I scanned it, because I always scan it. It's very informative. And I did a search on it, and it came back to a really, really, really creepy ass song on YouTube, right? That had a Creative Commons copyright on it, right? And that Creative Commons copyright had a smart contract hooked onto the back of it that went into the archives, including that company's archive for the schematics, as well as the Federal Reserve's archives, Honda, and a few others, as far as like the AAMBA had one in there. and they put that smart contract and they just buried it in the archives in the back as a,
Yeah,
hidden behind a
and,
creepy ass song on
and see
YouTube.
that's what we have for proliferating this internet today, guys. In case you don't understand it, you got a lot of people out there watching the blockchain, Bitcoin and all this, right? But underneath
Bitcoin is just a land registration. Sorry.
the blockchain that's going on the internet, far beyond the land registration. Like I said, this is a chain of title setup, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
creating
definitely.
value out of everything you put into it. And as a
Have
creator
you
of
ever?
that, if you don't know how to trace that down, they're gonna. It's very possible they could use it in a contractual way against you. That's how prolific
And they
this
do.
contract language is becoming in this metaverse.
Yep.
Is it's taking your language through AI and making contracts out of it, folks.
Yep. But that's one reason why contracts are supposed to be actually dictated into the record as well as written. Because the
Absolutely.
master
taking
file,
your
the
biometric
IRS is
data,
actually.
like fingerprints or iris scans, and converting that into a metaverse instrument on the blockchain. What 3.0?
You
Yeah.
you can use certain 3D printers to create fingerprints.
Well, you can create, like 3D, diagrams from your fingerprints too, because they do it all the time
Yeah.
as
I
pieces,
mean, and,
right?
and
I
what's
was referring
and
to
what's
the
to
phone
say
as well.
and what's to say that you couldn't just simply program certain biometric parameters? Say the average male thumbprint is so big, so you enter into a computer program. You're looking for a thumbprint of such and such diameters with these points,
With
and
these
then just put
pinpoints.
certain
Yeah.
number of pinpoints on it as showing embedded different routings, and just have AI create a fingerprint, and then all of a sudden start searching the database for a fingerprint like that. I guarantee you
And
might come up with several close matches
I,
and make an accusation about something that's totally false. We have the video,
I
audio,
actually found
and
they're using
graphics to do
shipping
that.
lanes. Yeah, I found they're actually using like shipping lanes, like predetermined shipping routes and lanes and stuff like that, and matching those up with the points on people's fingerprints to
Wow.
give them a value. Yeah, right. I was like, that's actually pretty ingenious. But yeah, really quick, have you ever heard of a website called Namebase.io?
No.
Look into it and tell me what you think. I think you'll find it very interesting.
Namebase.io.
Yep.
All right. Oops, let me come right back, folks. I lost my video again. I'll be right back.
How are you doing
Commercializing
tonight,
your
Graham?
name. I'm doing great. I just went to the name base. That's interesting.
Yeah, right? You look into the auctions and stuff, it gets even more interesting.
Well, that kind of adds up to this whole scheme that we're talking about, where they're trying to take the world too. It's all blockchain,
Yep.
which is going to be integrated with Web 3.0. They
Yep,
kind of
because
already have a
that
lot of,
particular site deals with the whole handshake websites, which is on the HNS, not the DNS.
and
So
they
you
have like
actually
a
get
lot
to
of
control
people's biometric fingerprint. Most everyone uses it for their phone to unlock their phone. Uh, you
or
got
they do the
iris
facial
scan
scan with the retinal, right? All that. Yeah.
on the phone, and I know that there's some crypto. There's a crypto video I saw already half a year ago. They were scanning their irises and receiving cryptocurrency for free. Uh, but I mean, they're just placing your biometric data on a data broker. On top of this, the namebase.io, it's like you're commercializing a metaverse imprint of your
Of you. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
not
Claim the
of
only,
name.
you, of your God's likeness and image.
well,
Yeah.
not only,
And
not only that.
they even do the vein print anymore. The
Well, not
veins like
only,
in your body.
well, not only that, but this AI is programmed to take those biometrics and use that information in their analytic system and come up with various different things dependent upon your demeanor, your visual look, your sound, your
Your
age, things like
heredity.
that, and specifically pull
Bloodline.
up certain political or advertisement type situations in your browsers.
And on
It,
top of
it,
that, they
it
can
literally,
analyze your behavior.
well, that's what I'm saying. It literally knows
Yeah.
the difference between male and female to the extent that it can discern a 65-year-old male that might possibly have health issues because of the way he looks and his size and everything, comparatively to a younger male of 35 years of age in good shape and everything, and know that the dynamics of the advertisements to send to those two different individuals would be totally different. And therefore, it sorts out through those analytics that it's using as a diagnosis. It's literally AI is using us and viewing us as its own, or through its own programming to give it an analytic response in in its own program. It's got a
And when they
responsive
classify
system.
it, yeah, and when they classify
I've
us as
always
male and
told people
female, they classify us.
AI is dangerous because it's going to classify
It,
humans as heathens, as consumers, as parasites, and another term for that is a virus.
and actually, they actually classify if it's male and female, you're classified as different kinds of animals, and that's how one of the ways that they monetize is through the 4-H program and through the schools, and they literally auction people off as animals through the shelters as strays.
Yeah, and we have to understand too, when you talk about the virus thing, we have to understand computers know that humans are not viruses. Okay, they will not equate mankind as a virus because it is not a virus to a computer, as a computer knows the very definition of a virus as defined for computers. See, they know the difference between the programming virus versus a biological virus, and therefore make the distinction already that people are not viruses.
Except for in the FDA. The FDA does classify us as virus because we are most of our most of our cellular makeup is actually viral, but they also classify us as parasites, fungi, bacteria, a whole
Right,
bunch of stuff.
and that goes down to the quantum physics of having. We actually make our own DMT. We actually make our own cannabinoid oils. We actually make our own various different elements that we supposedly think that we only get from nature. What are we? We are natural, and so it comes down to fly DNA. How much percent of the fly DNA is in humans, and vice versa? How much DNA of humans is in fly DNA? We've come across a
And those
lot of
chemicals.
amazing. Yeah, it bears down to that we are chemical factories in all aspects of
Uh-huh.
life. It's a chemical reaction. Water itself is a soluble.
Well, and those chemicals are actually used on the IRS level. One of the forms that makes up the Bloomberg terminal is literally chemicals, exporting and importing chemicals, all different kinds, and fuel, right?
Well,
It's
yeah, and
interesting.
that goes to all that the hypothecation thing you were talking about earlier, bifurcation and hypothecation to 144 times or whatever. It's an amazing setup that they do with the medical industry in the same respect. See, they're trying to mimic nature, and so we end up with synthetic medicines that purport that they have these nutrients in it when they actually only mimic it and your body doesn't really absorb them. Not for its proper use because it can't break them down or they're not structured right.
Right? Well, and one of the
Does it
ways that the
mimic them or
courts are
does it
actually
just block
monetizing
inhibitors?
Say what?
it blocks inhibitors, but it also creates new receptacles and stuff that are it goes to the wrong parts of the body, all that kind of stuff. It's not good. Think of it like an electrical, um, grid that somebody's gone in and they don't know what to do with the electricity, or like they don't have an electrician's license and they just went in and started like plugging in wires everywhere. That's basically what it does.
Yeah. And I wish people would really learn more about the electrical grid as it goes to our biological entities. We are
Yeah. Well,
that chemical battery that has a static electrical charge around us according to that energy field that is already there. We just have to learn how to
well,
use
one of the ways that the courts are actually monetizing and actually cashing in the most, I found, is actually through thrift accounts through healthcare.
well,
I
that's
even
what
found
Social
the
Security is.
form. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Medicaid, Medicare, right? But the
It's
thrift accounts give them unfettered access, and they even tell you that, like on the first page of it, don't file this in the court case.
Because those would be counted as write-offs. It'd be like a tax shelter for the courts, wouldn't it?
Yes, it is.
trying to find. I thought I had a place from Social Security that had the Mark Spendthrift Trust.
Spendthrift, which is a dowry, actually, I found out. It's an endowment. But what's really interesting is actually the lockbox for what they're using for the thrift accounts is in the FDA, which is underneath the Department of Health and Human Services, right?
Oh, they've got it under Mark Special Needs Pooled Trust.
That's a
Established,
508.
established by Mark Trust Inc., a nonprofit association, and is irrevocable. The pooled trust contains individual trust accounts that are funded with the beneficiary's own assets and thus are considered grantor trusts.
Which would be just the
Straight from the
Social Security account.
straight from the Social Security's Program Operations Manual System. The Mark Special Needs Pooled Trust was established in 1995 and amended in April 1998, November 2001. The trust was established by Mark Trust Inc., a nonprofit association, and is irrevocable. And it's simply just a new trust that took over an old trust in the same form that was called something else. The pooled trust contains, and I'll do my research and look that up and find out what it is if you care. The pooled trust contains individual trust accounts that are funded with the beneficiary's own assets, thus are considered grantor trusts. The beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner, the one that makes the grant, and the grant is the settlement. The fact that the trust is irrevocable is sufficient to exclude from resources individual trust counts that were established prior to January 1st, 2000. In addition to being irrevocable, the master pool trust and individual trust accounts within it must meet the Medicaid Special Needs Pool Trust exception. See, they have to meet the exceptions to be able to include you in the trust. Sorry, I don't meet the exception. I'm not a resident. I'm not a United States citizen. I cannot partake. I am not qualified to administrate that or authorize the execution of documents from a United States business that is not fully qualified to do such business. I am the third party, pure and simple.
And the 508, that's what that is. If you look up on section 508.gov,
I think they're running
That's
it
what that comes back to, is that
through a
special needs
503.
trust.
So that's why I always tell
Say that
people
again?
that I believe they're running it through a 503c1. Or what's the other one? The 503?
501c3. 501c, it's a 501c3.
Correct. Because that's the
Yep.
statutory
Yep.
one. And then 508 is
That,
non-statutory.
well, no, but the 508 is actually, that is for the special needs. That goes through the ADA. The 501c3 is basically an entity that can create its own bonds and everything, but it's not set up for a special needs trust. That's why that's non-statutory and private, because it's dealing with healthcare. The 508 is going through the ADA and all that. And it literally is for the body. It's not for the person. That's one of the problems with that. Is you can
Yeah,
literally make your body disabled.
yeah. See, they're operating as a private foundation. That's a private investment foundation.
But there's other ones that you can utilize too. There's a whole bunch of 501Cs that are awesome and they use all the time. Like one that is overlooked all the time is a 501c4, which is one of the ones that they actually use against us constantly. That's a CPEO. But that's, I mean, you know, like basketball teams and any kind of professional,
Sports?
athletes or athletics, that's a 501c6. So there's a whole bunch, but there's 509, there's
Yeah,
50, yeah, you guys gotta look into them. There's a
yeah.
bunch
I'll
of
have to look
fun
into
little
them. I'm not
things.
finding it at the moment, but I'll look into it. But anyway, we come to the end of the stream for tonight. What do you guys got on the way out with this court registry investment system and stuff? Are you understanding it better and how they're just taking your information and investing in it because it wasn't securitized first?
I had a question pertaining to that. That I wrote. Would it be beneficial for us to write on the paperwork, if you're submitting any paperwork to the court, to place non-negotiable?
I don't know. It depends on the situation. You're going to have to learn how to negotiate no matter what. And in negotiating, if you're binding yourself into a contract, that means arbitration. That means it literally means it comes up to negotiation before it comes to accusation. So why be afraid of the contract? Learn the contract, keep it open, and let them know you're ready to play at the big boy table anytime they want to come up with real house chips.
Or could it
Or you
be
can just
considered?
bond the case and take it over.
Yeah,
Could it be not considered non-negotiable because they don't meet the preliminary requirements for your capacity to be in there as an agent, contractor, vendor, shareholder, or
correct.
licensee?
That's why everything is voidable, but you have to make that issue first. You can't just go
Okay.
around saying that, well, it wasn't good here, so I'm not going to do it. You have to make that issue first, showing that this was voidable and here's why. And since it's voidable, if there's a remedy at common law or in civil code, then we go that way. But if there isn't, then I have to be able to create a remedy, because what in fact that inconsistency does is creates an impossibility. You have to understand those contracts are very well written. They're perfected contracts. And if you let it slip by not knowing how to rightly divide those words, it doesn't matter what words you're using.
That's why you need
But
to focus on the action and not the title. Very, very, very important.
yeah, and that's why I say the quo warranto issue is that you're not going against them in their official title or their office. You're going against the record, because the record, by your own actions, reflects something false. So you have to recognize that. Repent for doing that, because it puts you in the bad light, saying you don't know how to act right. Now you have to act right, and in acting right, the only way to prove that you're acting right is to prove that the record is wrong, where and how. Otherwise,
Yeah, and
you,
an indemnity statement's really easy, isn't it? Sorry for making mistakes and thank you for your forgiveness. Thank you for any future forgiveness for any future mistakes I might make. Thank you.
yeah, um, it's a matter of letting them know up front that you're not perfect, you're willing to make amends if it comes to that, and that you want to do so privately. Matthew 18, verse 15. If you have aught with your brother, go to him in private. I don't need you to take me into the public venue. I need you to come to me in private. That's the first disassociation with the process that's actually due. Can't just go
What if
around
they
treating
won't?
everybody as if they're a public trustee and confronting them in public. There's a diplomatic
Right.
channel of notice, and you're supposed to use that.
What if they refuse to settle in private? Which is something I've been coming across a lot more
Well,
and more lately.
anybody that refuses to settle, that's dismissing legal tender. Therefore, the obligation is settled. That's the part about going to your brother in private if you have out
Plus,
with them, and if they
wouldn't that
don't.
make their further actions ultra virus? So meaning now they're not in their official capacity and in their private capacity against you.
Correct, and that's ultra vires. Yes, that's extrajudicial, beyond the scope of their duty. They're acting in a biased manner for private gain. Again, RICO.
That's a W-14, by the way, guys. That's for a private foreign contractor. So if you want to nail them on that and they're not acting honorably, you can ask them for their W-14 or their W-13 registration. They're going to be like a deer in headlights.
I'll have to check that out too. But like I said, I don't want to go forth with accusations and stuff. And I've got this meeting coming up with the at the local IRS office, and I hope whoever I end up working with is willing to be educated, and we can go forth peacefully and in that tutorial sense, back and forth through Socratic discussions, because I've got a lot of stuff to bring forth that she or he may or may not understand, and might delay the process a little bit, but I'm still going forward in that. If one wants equity, you must first come with equity. So if I expect them to learn what I've researched, then I have to be able to give them time to do the research too. Could take a few guys. So anyway, on our way out, what do you got?
Look into different kinds of businesses. Yeah, thank you. And look into the blockchain too. And come up with your own kind of business, guys. Don't just go and, because the C Corp is actually a registered name for a business. So is S Corp. So is Trust. They're actually businesses, and we're using somebody else's proprietary information when we do that. So, be creative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just a matter of knowing how to draw your story with your paintbrush, and realizing that your story isn't just limited to words. It expands into all your actions, which people will paint pictures with in their minds. So,
and yeah, you can use things instead of just like pictures or words. You can also make a game to explain how you're going to be operating and stuff. Monopoly did it.
And that's one of the things I've got in my background is I want to make a game as it relates to these administrative courts, contract law, trust law, and equity, and hopefully, yeah, well, yeah, and the same thing. Hopefully, put it out for the younger generations, so that we have a viable way of helping the younger generations learn about the civics, politics, contracts, trusts, and all that, and how to use them throughout their lives, rather than just placating that this public education system is well and good. It's not.
Right. And it's a good way to bridge the gap between the generations to teach them all. Yeah. I think.
All right. Well, like I said, folks, I appreciate everybody coming up on panel. I appreciate everybody down in chat. Roz Blackwood, the Tribe, KY, Imperium Private is up here on panel making comments down there. Joshua Jonio, Zach L. Goldsmith, Dean Phillips was here earlier. Everybody, Rebecca, good to have you. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you, and have a good night. We'll see everybody next time. Bye now.
Okay.